In 2016, Donald Trump ran as the ultimate outsider, the billionaire who wasn't owned, the man who would storm Washington, drain the swamp, and finally expose the corruption that's rotted this country from the inside out. He promised to take on the media, the political elite, the globalist establishment, and the secret networks pulling the strings behind closed doors. And if there's one case that proves those secret networks exist, it's the Epstein case. A billionaire pedophile connected to royalty, celebrities, presidents, and intelligence agencies. Protected for decades, and conveniently dead before he could testify. This isn't some online theory, this happened. And it's the clearest, most undeniable example of elite depravity that Trump's base has spent years claiming to fight. And yet, Trump is terrified of the Epstein files. He has the power to release them, and he won't. Why? Why would the man who built his brand exposing elite corruption be afraid to expose this? And what does that tell us about Trump, about his base, and about the real nature of the government they claim to hate? To understand why Trump's silence on Epstein matters, you have to understand what Trump represents to his base. From the start, Trump positioned himself as a populist outsider, a billionaire, but one who claimed he wasn't controlled by donors or lobbyists. He wasn't part of the Bush dynasty, he wasn't a Clinton, he wasn't one of them. While establishment Democrats pushed Clinton and crushed Bernie Sanders, another populist, though from the left, Trump promised to take on the deep state, the globalists, and the political elites both parties protected. He told people he was going to expose what they don't want you to know, the secret deals, the blackmail networks, the media cover-ups, the things whispered about in private but never said out loud on cable news.
About the swamp. Say it again.
And in doing that, he didn't just run a campaign, he built a movement. A rebellion against media, government, and corporate collusion. Within that world, Trump became more than a politician. He became the one man supposedly brave enough to reveal the ugly truths the establishment hides. And part of how MAGA culture justifies its distrust in democracy is by framing the ruling class as literal child predators, monsters protected by a rigged system of courts, cops, and politicians. If that's true, if they really are all in on it, then placing faith in democratic institutions isn't just naive, it's foolish, and it makes the case for revolution, or for a strongman savior who can bypass those institutions and take power directly. That's what Trump represents to his most loyal followers, and that's why Epstein isn't just another scandal in this story, it's the litmus test. And that brings us to Epstein. Because if there's one case that perfectly embodies what Trump's movement claims to be fighting, it's this. You have a billionaire who's abused underage girls, protected by both Democrats and Republicans, tied to global finance, intelligence agencies, and even royalty. A man shielded by the legal system for decades, not despite of his power, but because of it. In MAGA circles and across conspiracy-minded populism, Epstein became the symbol of the swamp, a walking, talking indictment of a corrupt elite that plays by different rules. And for a lot of people, he's the clearest example of why they no longer trust the courts, the media, or their own government. QAnon, MAGA influencers, and right-wing media figures invoke Epstein constantly, not just as a criminal, but as proof. Proof that the ruling class isn't just greedy, they're depraved. And they get away with it because they control the system. And here's the hard truth. They're not entirely wrong. Epstein isn't a theory, he's real, and his story is one of the most grotesque, well-documented examples of elite criminality, judicial leniency, and institutional failure in modern American history. If populism had a mission statement, exposing Epstein would be its first line. For MAGA, Epstein isn't just a criminal. He's the symbol of everything their movement was built to destroy.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein.
And yet, despite making the deep state the core of his crusade, Donald Trump has gone out of his way not to expose Epstein's secrets. As president, he has every tool at his disposal. Loyalists in the Department of Justice, an FBI director of his choosing, blanket authority to declassify any file, and a media echo chamber ready to amplify any bombshell. He controls the narrative. So what did he do?
I don't know. It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats.
He called it a Jeffrey Epstein hoax. He branded demands to unseal the files stupid and his own supporters weaklings for caring. When Epstein's name surfaced, he launched onto his familiar Clinton-Obama-Biden blame shift, never once owning up to his decades-long ties or the fact that Epstein died on his DOJ's watch. When reporters pressed him, he shrugged, calling the case sordid but boring, as if the fate of sealed client lists and the lives of Epstein's victims were just another tedious story cycle.
The Attorney General's handled that very well.
He lauded Attorney General Pam Bondi's fantastic handling of the matter and insisted it's up to the courts and the Justice Department, not him, to decide what the public sees. Even now, with mounting pressure from MAGA figures like Matt Gaetz and public calls for transparency, Trump is demanding the files stay under lock and key. The one man who vowed to drain the swamp is fiercely guarding his darkest corners and smearing anyone who demands he open them. In doing so, he not only betrays the anti-elite, anti-corruption message his movement was built on, but he actively discredits the very truths he's concealing, mocking his most loyal followers for buying into the conspiracy he himself perpetuated. But we've seen this before. Throughout history, populist strongmen posture as outsiders while safeguarding the elites who keep them in power. The gap between their fiery rhetoric and their insider deals isn't an accident. It's the strategy. Trump is no exception. He's the pattern. Now let's be clear about Trump's actual connections to Jeffrey Epstein, because the record isn't vague, it's documented. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Trump and Epstein socialized together. They attended parties at Mar-a-Lago. They were photographed side by side. And in 2002, Trump gave a now infamous quote to New York Magazine, calling Epstein a terrific guy, adding, and I quote, "He likes them on the younger side." When Epstein was arrested in 2019, Trump suddenly claimed to barely know him, pretended they'd fallen out long ago. But the paper trail and the photos say otherwise. It's also worth noting that Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most prominent accusers, was working at Mar-a-Lago when she was first recruited by Epstein's operation. No one's accused Trump of assaulting her, but the proximity matters. In 2016, a lawsuit was briefly filed alleging that Trump and Epstein assaulted a 13-year-old girl in the 1990s. That case was voluntarily dropped, coincidentally, right before the election. No charges were filed, no evidence publicly substantiated it, but it's part of the public record and a pattern worth acknowledging, given that 2 earlier suits were filed over the same alleged events. Then there's Alexander Acosta, the U.S. attorney who gave Epstein his secret sweetheart deal in 2008. Trump appointed him as labor secretary. The man who let Epstein off easy was rewarded with a cabinet position. Acosta isn't the only one. Standing next to Trump, while he downplayed and discredited the Epstein case, was none other than Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, Epstein's former next-door neighbor who bought a house from an entity tied to Epstein himself. And who was Attorney General while Epstein was arrested a second time and then died in custody? William Barr, Trump's appointee, whose father was a headmaster at Dalton, where Epstein taught despite having no degree. It was Trump's Department of Justice that oversaw the Bureau of Prisons when Epstein was found dead in his cell under circumstances so suspicious that Barr himself publicly called it a perfect storm of screw-ups. Trump didn't call for a deeper investigation after Barr reported his findings. He didn't demand that the files be unsealed. Instead, he spread baseless conspiracy theories blaming the Clintons, carefully deflecting attention away from his own proximity to the case. But it isn't just Trump's connections to Epstein that raise questions. It's his broader pattern of suspicious, obstructive, and frankly corrupt behavior while in office. Let's start with the records. Trump routinely destroyed and withheld official documents. Staffers testified that he tore up briefing notes, meeting records, and official memos, despite knowing they were legally required to be preserved. He deleted transcripts from White House records, took hundreds of classified government documents to Mar-a-Lago, lied about returning them, and, according to court filings, even asked for security camera footage to be deleted when investigators started asking questions. What was in those documents exactly? He forced White House staff, campaign workers, and administration officials to sign sweeping non-disclosure agreements, something no other modern president demanded, creating a culture of silence around his administration. When people did speak up, whistleblowers, inspectors general, and career intelligence officials, Trump labeled them traitors. He fired inspectors general who were investigating corruption inside his government, and, when it came to his inner circle, Trump protected them. He pardoned convicted allies like Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, and Steve Bannon. All three were implicated in obstructing investigations connected to Trump himself. The Bannon pardon is especially telling. Bannon wasn't just accused of financial fraud, he was accused of exploiting MAGA supporters for personal gain through a phony border wall fundraising scheme. And Trump let him walk, once again spitting in the face of average Americans. He spent years refusing to release his tax returns, only handing them over after a court order which revealed questionable deductions, business losses, and potential tax fraud. This isn't the behavior of a man determined to expose elite corruption. It's the behavior of someone trying to control what gets out. For all the talk about taking down the establishment, Trump filled his administration with it. Wall Street billionaires running the Treasury, donors and cronies occupying top positions across the cabinet. He never exposed intelligence corruption, never unsealed Epstein's files, never used the power of the presidency to blow the whistle on the criminal networks his base claimed were destroying America.